Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Coaster Report. Hope you're all enjoying your evening. We have quite a bit of news this week, particularly out of the South. It's because Six Flags Over Texas proved me wrong. If you watched the show last week, you'll recall my mention of the fact that B&M is done building large dive coasters. Well, I guess I was wrong. The day our show aired last week, Over Texas announced Tormenta Rampaging Run, the world's first Giga Dive coaster. A Giga Dive is huge news for the roller coaster industry. In fact, I want to take a moment tonight to reflect on how impactful this will be for the industry. Up to this point, B&M has built 18 dive coasters. 7 of them were over 200 feet. However, the tallest, Yukon Striker, is only 223 feet with a 245-foot drop. Tormenta, on the other hand, will stand at a height of 309 feet with a 285-foot drop. This obviously far outclasses any other dives that have been built. But that's not all. Oh no, Tormenta also includes some of the world's tallest inversions in its length. This includes world's tallest vertical loop. I feel like this record is always being broken. World's tallest vertical loop. If you can even remember, there was a time when Full Throttle had this record. Actually, though, after a bit of preliminary research, it's apparent that this is a bogus record. The Mach Hypercoaster Flash still holds this record even after Tormenta will be built, and Six Flags is just beefing up the offer like they always do. So what will this do for the industry? Well, there's a few things. For starters, this ride is the first dive coaster to be listed on RCDB as custom wide since Yukon Striker. It's hard to tell, but based on the renderings, I make this ride out to have 8 seats per row. This seems awfully thin for a wide coaster, but I suppose more than 7 is where they draw the line. Nonetheless, this is still a milestone for dive coasters. I feel like everything has been getting more compact with dive coasters recently, so this is a breath of fresh air. Take even the new for 2025 Wrath of Rakshasa. Not that this coaster is small by any means, but marketing it like a hyperdive and being underwhelmed with a coaster that barely crosses 150 is a bit excessive. Tormenta still falls victim to perhaps my biggest critique of the new gen dives, the infamous Beyond Vertical Drop. Look, I love me a good Beyond Vertical Drop. That being said, I don't believe they belong on dive coasters. To my knowledge, B&M had never even done a drop steeper than 90 degrees until Dr. Diabolical came around. Don't quote me on that, though. Dive coasters are meant to dive, straight down. Not more than straight down, 90 degrees. To me, these 92 and 93 degree drops just seem like helpless cash grabs trying to rope in more crowds with another titular record. Speaking of records, let's talk about them, particularly the ones Tormenta will hold. According to the park, there's 6 of them in total. Obviously, considering it's the main draw of the ride, you likely know that this will become the tallest, fastest, and longest dive coaster in the world once it opens. What you might not know, however, is that this ride also breaks world records for the world's tallest vertical loop, like I mentioned before, the world's tallest Immelman, and the highest 95-degree Beyond Vertical Drop. Come on, Six Flags, we can do better. So yes, this ride breaks a lot of records. Like I mentioned before, this is a pretty major ride considering that it's the first Giga Dive. Or is it? This brings me to the second part of this argument. If you'll recall all the way back to 2020, when Orion opened up at Kings Island, there was a lot of controversy surrounding it. Now, the ride was undoubtedly great. It was smooth, airtime packed, filled with speed-based turns, and just an all-around fun ride. However, there was one thing enthusiasts just couldn't bring it to themselves to agree on. That, of course, was the ride's height classification. You see, Kings Island marketed this ride as a Giga Coaster. If you're unaware, a Giga Coaster is any ride that stands between the height of 300 and 400 feet tall. The problem with Orion was that it only stood 287 feet in height. The only reason Kings Island marketed it as they did was because the drop was 300 feet on the dot. This sparked much argument in the roller coaster community. Many called this ride a hypercoaster. Others stuck to the parks claimed that it was a Giga. I've personally never known where to stand in this issue. In my eyes, though, if it stands around 300 feet, it's a Giga. I never got too hung up on the details. Others did, though, and that's continued into this year. Tormenta is the opposite of Orion. It stands confidently over 300 feet in its pure height, but the drop doesn't quite make the mark, clocking in 15 feet short of the Giga line. Now, I've already heard a few conversations about this record online, and I'm sure that will only grow worse with time. However, I say let the arguers argue. We, instead, can enjoy this groundbreaking, breathtaking new addition that Six Flags has miraculously blessed us with. That's all I can say about Tormenta for now, but for first impressions, I have one word. Damn. And I mean that in a good way. Moving on, there's one other thing I want to discuss. Last week, I told you about the incident that occurred on Stardust Racers a few weeks back. Then I told you that I'd continue to provide updates on this case. And a case it is indeed. Zavala's family has moved this fiasco to the courtroom, attempting to sue Universal, I believe. A few more details about the incident have been brought up in the investigation, and as it turns out, I was right. Zavala did indeed have a pre-existing health condition, being a disabled rider. However, his lawyers stressed that this was not important. The case also revealed that it was likely that Zavala hit his head on the restraint after the first drop. He was unconscious for the rest of the ride after that point. I'll stress again that this is all still being pieced together and that there's still a lot that isn't concrete yet. As I mentioned last week, I'll be sure to keep you all updated as this incident progresses. Until then, though, this has been the Coaster Report. We hope to see you back next week. Good night, everybody.